Trenches at the grassroots level with the people to understand what's going on with them, because a great leader is also a great listener, all right?
That's right.
Now that that's all that nice stuff is out the way,
yeah,
let's get to work.
Yes.
All right, now, I first want to thank everybody for showing up, because this is the Sabbath, but for some people this is Saturday. Right. You know what I'm saying? So y'all could have been down the club, down the street or something like that, getting it in, but it's always good to see conscious individuals, whether you're Hebrew Israelite persuasion, which I subscribe to, Kemetic persuasion, Morse persuasion, Islam. Oh, we got Islam in the back. What's your nationality? So, you know, even though I have a Hebrew Israelite ideology, I love all my brothers of color, all my sisters of color. You know, I interface with y'all, I talk with y'all, I build with y'all. I even have a video we did this past Sunday at the Unity Summit. I was at Shaman Hotel, which is Nazi's spot. And we had a lot of brothers from different persuasions come. There was no arguing, no fighting. We were just building, talking. Actually, we left out there with a plan on how to work together. You understand what I'm saying? Right. So the bad thing about the debate, it's good and bad, right? The bad thing about the debate is that it creates a lot of contention in the community. And as you can see, a lot of it spilled over. You know what I'm saying? Way after the debate. It's supposed to be the final showdown, but it wasn't the final showdown because people are still debating. And rightfully so. You know, I believe the Hebrew Israelites, we're defending ourselves, our integrity, our character, and information we put out because it's been challenged. But at the same time, you know, the good thing about it is that it has brought Israel together. You understand what I'm saying? And I've learned that the phrase that says the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Anybody heard that phrase before? Yeah. Sometimes it may take that enemy for us to band together. And like I said at the Unity Summit, unfortunately, as melanated people, it may take when everything is taken away from us as a people that we come together, meaning that no modern conveniences, your food supply is limited, the money system is shot. It may take just that to bring us together, but we don't want it to get to that point. We want to be able to unify before it gets to that point, so that way we can look out for each other. Is that all right with y'all?
That's right.
All right. Now, I know y'all see the title already. Reason why I'm doing this presentation is because I had an interview with Ready for R, and me and Ready for R was talking. He was interviewing me at the Black National Theater, and he asked me for the PowerPoint. He said, yo, Devon, you know, I know you had a PowerPoint. It would be great if you could just let me see the PowerPoint and you just record it and go in. I said, okay. You know, so I spoke with him. He got me in touch with Joel. Me and Joel was talking. I asked permission from brother Zion Lex. Everybody knows Zion Lex right here?
Yes.
All right, my brother Zion Lex, I had to ask permission from the brother. I said, brother, you know, they can only squeeze me in for this weekend because I don't live in New York. Is it okay with you? And this is a good brother. He said, yeah, why not, Devon? You know, I'm cool with that. So I want to, everybody give a hand for him. Now, so what I'm doing now is, I know anybody else, who's here at the debate? Who's at the debate? Oh, wow. Everybody, almost everybody at the debate. Now, there was a point at the debate, you saw Devon, like, nah, I'm leaving, yo. I don't know if y'all saw that, right? Did anybody see me go crazy like that? I was like, what's wrong with Devon, right? But what happened was the time was cut short, and they were saying to us that, you know, we may not be able to do a second round, so, yeah, you're going to have to cut it right now. I said, what? I said, well, hold on. Polite, and I was talking to Polite. I said, Polite, I just finished telling these people that they would get a chance to do a question and answer.
Right.
Forget my part. What about the people? You know, and I'm not going to put the heavy fault on him, but he was just like, yo, you just run out of time. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be responsible. I'm in the trenches talking to the people, building with everybody, and I'm telling them that they may have a chance to speak. Nah, I'm not going to, I said, I'm out. So I was about to leave, and they was telling me, no, Devon said, I said, I said, I'm not going to be here when the building collapsed. Because the people's going to be like, how come we were not included? It's about y'all. Forget anything we say. If we don't listen to you guys, we don't interface with you guys, we're no good as a leader. You understand what I'm saying? So I was like, you know what, I'm leaving. So on my way out, I saw that my team needed help, technically. Because I don't know if people see me running around with chicken's head cut off. I had to go to Radio Shack and get supplies and set things up. And that wasn't even my job. But I did it because I know all these people that came out, they want to see something. We cannot let them down. So I stayed, and being that was the case, I was like, yo, let me let Zion go. So I went over to the group that was there, and I said, yo, where's Zion? They said, yo, we think Zion left. I said, Zion left? They said, yeah. I said, Nah, Zion. They said, yeah, Zion left. I'm like, you know what? Zion left, I'm going to go redeem him. So I said, yo, what PowerPoint should I get? They said, yo, get that polite. I was like, all right, fine. Let me pull that one out. So I pulled that one out. I said, all right, let me do a little dent in the 10 minutes that I had. So what I'm showing y'all right now is going to be the full presentation. I don't want to hold you here too long. I want to thank Nicholas Bookstore for allowing us to have a late start. I'm kind of happy it started late because now we got everybody here. Some more people wanted to come, but they wanted me to make it, so I decided to put the live stream up. That was okay with everybody here. You okay with me live streaming for everybody else? All right. It's not like in person though, but live stream, it is what it is. So the topic or the subject matter today, and what I wanted to pull out at the debate is called, were the ancient Kemetians atheists? This is a very, very important presentation, and not because it's from Divine Prospect, but because it's something that the Kemetic and the Hebrew Israelite community needs to know. There's a new age philosophy in the Kemetic community that is saying that there's no such thing as gods, and I'm putting in quotation, no such thing as gods in ancient Kemet. They didn't exist. No such thing as gods. Now, that's a big issue because the purpose of having a God is that you must please that God in order for you to have good fortunes in this life. And if you're saying that there's no such thing as gods, then who are you accountable to? Because then it results to relativism. Relativism meaning that if I feel something's right, I'm going to do what the heck I want to do. I ain't got to be accountable to nobody. But that's not how ancient Kemet was ran. Ancient Kemet was ran because they believed that there were gods that were greater than them, that were overseeing things. And the gods were responsible for the flooding of the annual flooding of the Nile. The gods were responsible for the daily harvest. The gods were responsible. This is why they had all these temples. And that's why they had oblations and drink offerings, etc. to these gods. So now when you displace indigenous African Kemetic people, because some of us believe in here that you're now Valley Africans, that there's no such thing as gods that their ancestors believe, then what is the agenda? Well, we're going to get into it. All right. Now, just so you know for the record, I'm not banging on polite. People say, yo, Devon, going on polite. I'm not banging on polite. But the reason why I'm selecting polite is because he's one of the main individuals that's spearheading this particular doctrine. So I need to use him as an example because he's the one that's spearheading it. So what we want to do is look at this quick clip here, and I want to point something out as we proceed through the rest of the slides. So I'm going to play this real quick for y'all.
Right? And now this is the fly part right here. You're going to love this part right here. With this part right here, this is how you define or identify Ra. Circle in the center. Okay? What better way to identify someone as prominent as a creator as putting this center here from which all existence begins, represent Ra. This is very important. This line right here, under here. We're going to talk about this soon. This is where his question arises. Right here, where I know they don't know what they're talking about. I've been studying this for over 6 years. So now we're going to go over here, and this is not pronounced. You see, these things sometimes work as a determinative, but this is actually a determinative symbol right here. The English alphabet has 26 letters. In Medu you have 26 occurrences or determinative values, which means that you have symbols that don't make sounds but give you designations. Then you have over 2,000 glyphs that you have to break down. These glyphs may either represent a word, or these glyphs might represent a collection of words, an idea. So it's all about the composition of the letters and where you find them to be able to evaluate what exactly you're looking at. So that's how this meta is functioning right now. Ra, now remember I told you I was going to tell you about this part of the word. This one right here. What does this little stick mean? What does this mean? This means to take that which you see literally. When you see this in Medunetta, this is not pronounced. This means you have to take what you're looking at literally. So again, this is not a letter. You do not pronounce this line. You take that which it corresponds with or is accompanied by literally. So what does this symbol mean? This symbol means Ra, the sun. Energy. This represents the sun. So when you see this line here, it means the literal sun. So when you're looking at Amen Ra, at this particular point, are you talking about a physical person? You're talking about the actual sun, based on its masculine principle. So when you see a male at the end of the word, all this denotes is that the principle is masculine based on what you're speaking about. So you're talking about the actual sun as it relates to its masculine principle. So when asked, how come Amun-Ra just don't take the bodies and do like our spook god does, very conveniently so he can't have proof that these people even existed? No, you're asking us. Now let's put it into context. How come the hidden power of the actual sun, the masculine principles of the sun, doesn't actually pick up the bodies? Now how stupid would that sound if he asked me that question in that context? Chances are he would have never even asked the question in the first place. So you see, you have a poorly educated brother, but he has no idea the beast that he's dealing with. And so none of you want them, but you see, what people don't understand, I don't put all my cards on the table. I wait till these debates so I can show you how lucrative this information can be for me, because I never divulge everything. I never let people know every single thing that I know. Until the opportunity presents itself, I move at my own pace. Y'all never got a chance to really hear my Egyptian build. Seti got the opportunity. Now let me tell you something about Seti.
Alright, so we're gonna move forward. Now,
I can't take no more.
You can't take no more? Now, again, I told y'all this was not a presentation to beat up Polite. I think Polite is brilliant, but sometimes his brilliance may fog a lot of his decision making. And that's just something personal that I've tried to reach out to him on, and some of y'all have seen a lot of the things that he's been doing recently to, you know, gain hype for an upcoming debate. But getting back to the subject matter, do you remember when Polite showed you Amun-Ra, and he showed you the three glyphs that was here? He showed you the sun, and then he showed you this little thing there that he says is a determinative that has to do with the masculine principle, right? Now, the interesting thing about that is that Polite avoided going in depth as to what that was. I watched that whole video. I've had conversations with him. I wanted to see what he was going to do at debate as far as pulling it out, and he didn't, because I didn't really get a chance to challenge him on it, because I just wanted to see what his response would be. But if you see this right here is from the Guardian sign list, right? And if you go to any sign list, a lot of this has been updated as well. If you go to the Guardian sign list, this right here is considered a determinative. Now, determinative does not have a phonetic value, meaning that it's not pronounced, right? It indicates something. That means that when you see the glyphs that precede it, it's giving you more information on what those glyphs are. He also showed you the sun. Now, going back, he was trying to explain Amun-Ra, because I think, was he responding to what you had said? You or Daniela? One of y'all. Yeah, because I think it was Daniela, where Daniela was saying that how come Amun-Ra did not protect the bodies of the suits, why they end up in the museums and so forth. So what Polite was saying is that there's no such thing as Amun-Ra. It just has to do with a principle of nature, right? Now again, that's Polite's interpretation. But when you go back to a source, and you see what this means, can anybody read what this says here?
Seated God.
Can y'all say it a little louder than that?
Seated God.
A seated God. It says, note that the slightly curved beard and straight wig. Now, if it was referring to the masculine principle, and I didn't put it up here, there's another glyph, okay, that represents the masculine principle that does not denote a God. Now look, when I say God to y'all, I'm doing quotations for a reason, all right?
Come on.
And if you keep looking at it, you read it here. It says, the determinative for God, patah. Okay, mont, it's an ideogram. Also, ideogram means, again, it's telling you about the idea of what the word is. It says it's also there when a god is speaking, or in Dynasty 12, the king. Because sometimes in the suit was considered God, and sometimes even suits in the cartouches would have this symbol denoting themselves in relation to the god, letting the people know that I'm in charge on behalf of these gods. Let's move forward. Where's my clicker? Okay, here we go. Determinatives are non-phonetic glyphs which give extra information about the meanings of words, distinguishes homophones, and serve as word dividers. All right, let's move forward. Now, Polite showed you the sun too. This is the sun right here. This is the noonday sun. This is called the highest point of Haru's rising, because Haru would fight during the day with Set, and he would win during the day, and then at night he would lose, and Set would win. And this is the cycle, the solar cycle, that the ancient Kemetians believed in. Now, when we look at this symbol meaning the sun, it's another ideogram, right? But this one also has a phonetic value as well. The reason why we don't say it's a determinative only is because it follows, after it comes another determinative. So that means that we take this literally, because what Polite pointed out to you was this stick that was underneath the sun. Now, that stick indicates a logogram. So that stick lets you know, are we going to use this as a letter? Are we going to use this as an ideogram, or we're going to use it to literally indicate something. Now again, I'm getting these from dictionaries. Anybody want to know where I get any of these sources from? You can ask me afterwards. I'll give you a list of where to get all these at. I wanted to bring my books with y'all, but they were kind of heavy, and unfortunately today I had to take the train here. And I didn't want to bring like 20, 40 books here for y'all to see, but best believe at the debate I had a whole bunch of them with me. A logogram or an ideogram represents an entire word. Many logograms are also determinatives and phonograms. If the sign is intended to act as a logogram, there is usually a vertical line, which you saw, a vertical line beneath it. For example, sign for the letter R, we get re or ra, becomes the sign for word mouth when written with a vertical line. So now, if we just had this glyph by itself, it would represent the letter R. But if you have the stick underneath indicating a logogram, now you're indicating in parentheses an idea about something. That means this is representing something other than just a consonant. And in this case, it's the mouth. And it's the same thing here with the sun. So when you have the sun by itself, it may represent a letter. But when you put this stick underneath, it indicates a logogram. Now it becomes an idea. It's talking about something literally, meaning that the literal sun. But why is this important? When you look here, when you learn ancient Kemetic science, and you learn their solar system, right? The solar calendar is another interesting one that you want to research. You have the sun by itself while it's rising. You have the noonday sun, which is that dot in the middle. Then the sun when it's eclipsed. The sun when it goes through a solstice and equinoxes, and the sun when it rises and it sets. Now here is an indicator of what you saw in regards to Amun-Ra, but I'm dealing specifically with Ra. And this is him right here with the solar disk above him. Okay, called Arius, that's above him. And there's a reason why I'm showing you that, but we're going to move forward. Now, the reason why I had to show you that is because Polite was saying that Amun-Ra does not literally mean a god, but what it means is a principle, a masculine principle of the sun. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to play this for you right quick. And this is going to get into pretty much what it is I'm going to be talking about.
If you ask me on a very
intellectual
day, and what I mean by on a very intellectual day, if I were to presume that the person that I'm speaking to can be trusted for me to have a high frequency communication, then I wouldn't use no chaser when I tell you that there are no Egyptian gods.
Oh.
I would tell you that. Okay? And that's part of the mythos. Now, I would express that they are Egyptian gods to the laity. I would express that to the laity. And the reason why I would express that to the laity would be through the convenience. It would be through the convenience of conversation, right? And then I will work my way up to the point that I will work my way up to the point to get to you right now, right? So right now, I'm under the presumption that you guys are scholars, or at least purport to be. I do have confidence in your abilities to do research, so I'm going to tell you something that you may not have heard before, and then I'm going to let you know that there are no Egyptian gods. And if you question our Egyptian gods, right, I would still respond to your questions based on the context in which that question arises, based on the debate. But again, I'm telling you right now, there are no Egyptian gods. So if we go to Old Kingdom, I like the Old Kingdom archaic. I'm telling you, they ain't no gods. That's what I'm telling you. There's no gods. What I'm saying is there are no gods. Now, if we're trying to use God to the best of our ability to ascribe to something that is taking place or transpiring within Egypt, then sometimes we go along with the bill. But we all grown men here, so I don't have to talk about Santa Claus in here or nor the Easter Bunny. So now I'm keeping it a buck with you, and I'm letting you know all that stuff about Egyptian gods that you've been hearing is not actually a fact, because there's no word that's going to equate to that word God. Now maybe you could do Lord, maybe we could find Neb, we could say Neb is Lord, we could do that, we could see Nesut, right? Or Nebet, we could do all of that. But once you start talking about God, the implication of that word doesn't even have a context in Kemet until you go probably to the Ptolemaic period or when invaders start coming in with their ideologies. Well, we talking the Old Kingdom here.
Old Kingdom.
There's no God.
Just so you know, Amun-Ra is not Old Kingdom. Amun did not come about into the Middle Kingdom when they started to merge the different nomes. Prior to that, there were different entities. You had Re, or Ra, and then you had Amun. Pay attention. Like I said, I'm going to tell you something that you'll probably never heard before in your life. You gotta listen when he talks. This guy is a genius, man. He knows what he's saying, and you can't say, I got you, polite, because he gives you the hint when he speaks. He said, I'm gonna tell you something you ain't never probably heard before in your life. There's no such thing as Egyptian gods. He said, in the concept of God, then come about into invasion. So he's talking about the Persian invasion maybe, or the Greek invasion. He wasn't really clear here. But we're gonna go to the Old Kingdom, where they actually had a place called Heliopolis, where they worship a god called Ra. But we gotta see, what is this God concept? Because what he's doing is drawing a straw man and making it seem like we're using God in a sense as a Eurocentric scholar. But that's not what we're talking about when we say God. But I'm going to define it for you. Let's move forward. Now, definition. The reason why I chose Oxford, which I don't like, but I chose it, is because for some reason, Shaka loves Oxford, right? And polite, you know, he's all right with it. But I use Oxford for some reason. They highly respect Oxford. Okay, cool. So I went to the Oxford Dictionary online, and I said, okay, let me get a couple of terms to make sure we have the same frequency of communication. Problem with people is that sometimes I may say something, you may say something, it's the same word, but we have different connotations to that word. So what I want to do is clarify it to make sure we all, throughout this entire lecture, that we're speaking the same language. All right?
That's right.
First word here is deify. Deify means to worship, regard, or treat someone or something as a god. Okay? Deity is a god or goddess. Divine is of, from, or like God or a god. They can say, okay, then what is God? God is a superhuman being or what?
Spirit.
Worship as having what?
Power.
Over what?
Nature.
Or what?
Human fortune.
Also known as?
A deity.
See?
Oh my God.
What is an atheist? A person who what?
Disbelief.
Or lacks
Belief.
in the existence of what?
God.
But when we say God, remember, God has a lot of different connotations. But if we get down to the root word, we're referring to a superhuman being, something that's greater. Super means above being, or a spirit worshipped as having power over nature. Merriam-Webster Dictionary says that an atheist is one who believes that there is no deity. Now the question was, if no deities existed, being a spirit or a superhuman being, as having power over nature or human fortunes, because now what Polite is doing is he's saying you don't even know what God means. The Europeans gave you this word God, and it's something very abstract. But we're not using that definition. We're using this definition. Keep this in mind. Let's move forward. Now I want to talk to y'all about Zep Tepi. I tried to touch on this, but I didn't really get too much in depth. Does anybody know what Zep Tepi is? Anybody heard this term before? Anybody here have the Kemetic persuasion? Raise your hand. Don't be afraid. I can't tell nobody. The camera's not on y'all.
Yeah, of course.
Yo, I don't see no hands. You don't look too confident. Listen, nobody's gonna bite you. It's okay. Raise your hand, Royale.
Yeah,
see, I had to call them out.
Yeah, I said
all right.
yeah.
So who else? Anybody else? It's okay, y'all. We family in here right now. Right now, we family in here.
Yeah.
Nobody else? All right. So it's a pretty biased crowd here. You Kemetic?
I'm holding the camera up.
Holding the camera. He ain't raising his hand. He's like, nah, I'm trying to do it. All right. All right. Zep Tepi is a very important term when you research ancient Kemet. Because I'm going to tell you this right now, a lot of scholars and even individuals in the black scholastic community for the Kemetic persuasion, they don't like touching on this. You know why? It becomes spooky. Ooh, like Casper the Ghost spooky, right? This is spooky stuff. They talk, oh, he's spookism. Hebrews like spookism, Islam is spookism. But my man, this is kind of spooky too. But what is this? Here's what the ancient Egyptians said about the first time, that's what Zep Tepi means, when the gods, remember we said superhuman beings, and ruled in their country. They said it was a golden age during which the waters of the abyss receded, which we know as Noon. And then when the waters receded, the primordial darkness was banished, and humanity emerging into the light was offered the gifts of civilization. Somebody gave the ancient Kemetians the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to do all the great feats that they did. And then just pop out the sky, according to them. They spoke also of intermediaries between gods and men, the Urshu, a category of lesser divinities whose title meant the Watchers. About to sound like the scriptures almost, right? All right. Getting kind of spooky now, right? And they preserve particularly vivid recollections of the gods themselves pursuing and beautiful beings called the Neteru. It's the Neteru when you talk about more middle kingdom pronunciation. Who lived on earth with mankind and exercised their sovereignty from where? Can somebody read that? Heliopolis. And I have that there, very important, because my personal expertise is the Old Kingdom and pre-dynastic. Because to me, that's the most interesting part of ancient Kemet. Now, I know a little bit about the Middle and Late Kingdom and when the invasions came in, but I love this spooky stuff. This is interesting stuff, right? Now look, keep reading, right? It says, and other sanctuaries up and down the Nile, some of these Neteru were male and some were female, but all possessed a range of what?
Supernatural
Powers, which include the ability to appear at will as men or women, or as animals, birds, reptiles, trees, or plants. This is why when you see the gods, you see them have different animal heads. It represented something. Paradoxically, their words and deeds seem to have reflected human passions and preoccupations. Likewise, although they were portrayed as stronger and more intelligent than humans, it was believed that they could grow sick or even die or be killed under certain circumstances. Move forward. They can say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, Zep Tepi. Well, let's look at it on the walls of ancient Egypt. Zep Tepi depiction on the walls at the Heru Temple of Edfu in Kemet. Now, what they're going to say to you is that, oh, this was erected later on in Egyptian history. Okay, cool, I got y'all. But we're going to trace the breadcrumbs, right? But take a look at these images right here. These were still made by indigenous Egyptians. Keep looking. See, these are the pantheon of the gods here. This right here is a little ship, you know, that you're sailing on. This is what the solar rock that Ra sails on. And this right now, if you go to this temple, you'll see all of this stuff. And when you go there, and anybody that goes to Kemet, I want y'all to ask them to take you here and ask them, what does this mean? See, I don't see nobody talking about this stuff. Ask them what does that mean. Let's move forward. Now, I'm going to read this, some of this real quick, not all of it, a lot right, but we got to know a little history. And this is on Ra. I'm dealing with Ra, not Amun-Ra, because Polite talking about the Old Kingdom, and Amun-Ra is not in the Old Kingdom. We're talking about Ra. Ra was an ancient god, but not the oldest of the gods. The first references to Ra date from the 2nd dynasty. However, by the 5th dynasty, he was a powerful god who was closely associated with the pharaoh and the Suf. The pharaoh was already seen as the embodiment of Heru. And so the two gods became linked, sometimes as a composite deity, Ra, Horakati, right? Ra is Horus of the horizon. Remember I showed you the sun? All right, the horizon is the sun rising, but when it gets to its highest peak, it's the Heru, because that's when Heru was winning the battle. Ra also can be associated with Atum, the created god of the Ennead Heliopolis, as Atum-Ra. You know, this is in Polite's name. By the 5th dynasty, the pharaoh was referred to as the son of Ra. Keep that in mind. And the name of Ra was incorporated into the throne name of every king from the point onwards. Many Old Kingdom pharaohs built sun temples in which to worship Ra. According to the pyramid text, Ra, as a tomb, emerged from the waters of Nun as a ben-ben stone, an obelisk-like pillar. He then spat forth Shu, which is the air, and Tefnut, which is moisture. Anytime you see the T at the end of a word, that designates the feminine principle. Just like in Hebrew, you got the He or the I at the end. All right. And Tefnut, in turn, gave birth to Geb and Nut. Ra tried to separate Geb and Nut by placing Shu in between them, which you'll see where Shu is coming over the two gods, right? It says between them that Nut cannot give birth on any day of the calendar. However, Thoth or Tehuti wanted an extra 5 days from the moon so that Nut could give birth, etc., etc. The Middle Kingdom, look at this, saw the rise to prominence of Amun, of Thebes. Although Ra kept his association with the pharaoh, he was to some degree absorbed by Amun as Amun-Ra, also in Polite's name, right? However, the priests of Amun became very wealthy and influential, and so some of the pharaohs of the New Kingdom chose to elevate Ra in his stead, perhaps partly because he was already closely associated with the pharaoh. For example, Thutmose promoted Re Horakati as his favorite god, while Amenhotep III took the epithet the dazzling sun and named his wife pleasure boat the Aten Glenis. Well, let's move forward. Ra was often described as the father of the gods. We're going to get to that. He was sometimes thought to be married to Hasat or Hathor, although the latter is usually referred to as his daughter, which is a position that I ascribe to, as his worship was predated by that of some of his children, Hathor and Heru. It seems likely that he took on this role when he was associated with the created god Atum. Here's some images of him. This is him on a solar bar, right, going over the waters, right? We're going to get into that. Now, one thing you may hear them say, oh, that's all high science. If you want to really know science behind this stuff, I would recommend you get these two books, Cosmology and Controversy, the historical development of the two theories of the universe, and accretion processes and star formation. I don't know how many people here love science. This is a deep read. Because what this does is that it says, what I have typed up here, the science behind our new creation story, I knew is another name for Heliopolis, in modern terms. Waters of noon are known as the neutron soup in which the universe evolved from. This provided the opportunity after the Big Bang to form stars such as the sun. When you read these two, this is the real science that they're trying to push their ideology onto, right? They try to clean stuff up because it was kind of spooky during those days, right? Before things got established. Move forward. Now, what is the Ennead? This is very important, right? The most detailed Egyptian account of creation concerns the deities known as the 9 gods of Heliopolis or Anu, or the Ennead from the Greek, right? It says the first of these was Ra-Atum, who came into being on the primeval mound and planned the multiplicity of creation in his heart. He caused the first division into male and female when he took his semen in his mouth and spat or sneezed out Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. They explored the dark noon and were lost to Ra-Atum, who sent his divine eye, fiery power regarded as the sun god's daughter, to look for them. The goddess returned with Shu and Tefnut, and the first human beings were formed from the tears wept by Ra-Atum on being reunited with his children. Keep this in mind. From the, I don't know what this says here. Oh, sexual using of Shu and Tefnut, it's kind of blurry, came Geb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess. These two embraced so closely that there were no room for anything to exist between them. Nut became pregnant by Geb, but it was impossible for children to be born. Eventually, their father, Shu, the air god, separated Geb and Nut. With the aid of 8 beings known as the, I can't even see, the head gods, Shu held the sky goddess high above the earth so that there was spare for living creatures and air for them to breathe. Remember, they were so close-knit. There was thought to be a second sky below the earth. Again, sounds almost like the scriptures, right? The primeval waters continue to surround the corners of the earth and the sky. The sky goddess sometimes took the form of a naked woman arching over the earth, and sometimes the form of a cow partnered with the stars. She was said to swallow the sun every evening and was sometimes accused of waiting to swallow all her children. In each instance, Nut was represented as a, I can't see what that says, but a creature notorious for for eating, its own young, which is very interesting. The children of Nut were 2 pairs of twins, Osar or Set, and Seth and Nephthys. Osiris or Osar and Isis or Set are said to have fallen in love in the womb, but Nephthys despised her brother Set. As the eldest of the children of Geb and Nut, Osiris was desired to rule Egypt. Now, what does all this mean? What this means is that Zep Tepi is telling the story of the sun god Ra rising out of the waters, or out of noon, which is the eternal waters, and he settled on what's called the Ben, which was a mound that rose up out of the waters. And now, as we continue to read, it shows here how he created his children, how they created their children, how we get all the way to the point where we have Osar, Set, Heru, Seth, and Nephthys. This is very important. Keep the Ennead in mind, which means the 9 gods. Move forward. The creation of mankind by Ray. I don't know how I messed that up, and I'm a perfectionist. But anyway, mankind was said to have sprung from race tears, as we just read, and the gods who, authority, and see a mind from blood drawn from his what? Penis, right? They are the drops of blood which came forth from the phallus of Ra when he went forth to perform his own mutilation. These drops of blood sprang into being under the forms of the gods who are in the bodyguard of Ra, who accompany the god Tem daily and every day. This is from the Papyrus of Anan. According to the Cosmology of Heliopolis, or Anu, Ray had created himself either out of a primordial lotus blossom, which is very important, I'm going to touch on that tomorrow, or on the first land to emerge from the primeval water, which is the Ben. He then created Shu, air, and Tefnut, moisture, who in turn gave birth to the sky, the goddess Nut, and the earth god Geb, and the next Papyrus. His relationships to the other gods is a bit different. O Ra, who art Heru Kuti, the divine man-child, the heir of eternity, the self-begotten, the self-born, king on the earth, prince of Tuat, which is the underworld, right? Tuat is the netherworld. The Duat is the underworld. Governor of Orket, thou didst come from the water god, thou didst spring from the sky god Nu, who thou cherished thee, and order thy members. Thy mother Nu is esteemed by thy father Nu. Let's move forward. The book of the Celestial Cow. It's like, yo, what are you talking about, Divine? All right, well, let's get you a source. Anybody can go home and read the book of the Celestial Cow? The reason why this is important is because they say this is mythos. They say that Zep Tepi period is all mythos. So when you read this is just made up. But I'm going to show you something. The central theme of the book of the Heavenly Cow is mankind's rebellion against the elder god, Re, resulting in the punishment of humans by the fiery eye of Re in the form of the goddess Hathor. It takes place after Re's long rule on Earth. Did y'all catch that? But he's just the sun. I never seen a sun rule on Earth. That's just me. Anyway, first part places considerable emphasis on the royal role of the sun god, who bears a royal title, and whose name is surrounded by a cartouche. Cartouche is a little circle with a twist at the bottom, which indicates a name, a personal name. He is specifically given rulership over both the deities and humans. Prior to the rebellion, which required a complete reordering of the world, there had been a golden age where the various deities and humans were both under the what? Sovereignty of who? During this previous age, the sun god had not yet begun his daily course through the sky in another world. Hence, there was no cycle of day and night, nor was there another world, and death did not exist. That's interesting because the Bible talks about something similar to that. But we're going to look at the rebellion. Then, when mankind's rebellion took place, the sun god first consulted with the primeval deities, including Shu, Teth, and Gen, but particularly the goddess Nun and Hathor in the great house, where we get Para or Pharaoh, which means great house, in Heliopolis or Anu. Afterwards, Hathor was sent to inflict her punishment, but the sun god took what? Pity on those humans who were left. He saved them by causing Hathor to become drunk on the blood of red beard. Afterwards, the sun god Re withdrew to the sky on the back of the celestial cow, who was the goddess Nu transformed. This would account for the importance of the book for the king, who was what? The who?
Sun.
The who?
Sun.
And successor of Re, and who withdraws to the sky upon his death, like Re, on the back of the heavenly cow. Now humankind could suffer what?
Death.
That's spooky, right? And so from his position in the sky, Re constructed the what? Netherworld as their realm. The third section of the book. Within the netherworld, Re placed many serpents that were entrusted to the care of Geb, the earth god. Now look at this. He also sets the moon in the sky and appoints Tehuti, Lord of the moon, and deputy over creation. Now, through Tehuti, people will know Re. That sounds, oh, somebody's phone. I know this is like a spot right here to plug up your phone, but
Sorry about that.
it's okay, it's cool. Alright. Alright. You good? Okay. Alright, so this is some spooky stuff, but this legend is cut in hieroglyphics on the walls of a small chamber, in case you want to know where it's at if you go to ancient Egypt. And the tomb was Seti I about 1350 BC. What year was that? 1350 BC. Invasions did not happen at that time. But this is some spooky stuff, right? And the invaders brought it in. Although it first appears as one of the shrines discovered in the tomb of King Tut. Let's move forward. Now, who's Tehuti? This guy is very important. Tehuti is widely respected because it is to him that various achievements and different kinds of knowledge are attributed. He is credited for having invented writing, medicine, chemistry, law, rhetoric, and the higher aspects of mathematics, astronomy, and astrology. Not to mention the early Egyptians' understanding of the what? Intricate dynamics of universal order. He was known as a messenger who moved between the gods and the humans. The Greeks derived the word thought from his name. Thoth. That's what the Greeks call him. He is also said to have been the great architect of the Great Pyramid, aided by a high priest. Listen to what I'm saying, guys. High priest named Ra or Rata and Isis as counselor and advisor. He is attributed to have written 1,100 books and published 20,000 works of different kinds. Listen to this, y'all. The Greek researchers saw some of these books and they point this fact out in their writings. Some of the writings have come down to modern age. For instance, in 1877, the Astor Library of New York, which you can check over here, purchased a facsimile of an Egyptian medical treatise dated 1552 BCE. This is before invasion. And they talking about this guy, Tehuti, gave him all this knowledge. You can go back and see this document if you want. This document was purchased in Egypt by an archaeologist named Ebers, where we get Ebers Papyrus. And bore internal evidence of being one of 6 Hermetic books on medicine named by Clement of Alexandria. The text is now known as the Ebers Papyrus. But the general consensus is that it is indisputably one of the 6 medical treatises written by Thoth or Tehuti. Tradition declares that on the dead body of Thoth at Hebron, right, was found the initiated. the tablet known as the Smaragdine Emerald Tablet. Characteristic of Thoth, the first sentence merely states that it speaks not fictitious things, but that which is true and most certain. From this tablet evolved the key in comprehending the what? Dynamics of the universe and how they affect mankind. The book came to be known as the Eperdine. I think that's what it says. I can't really see it there. Matter of fact, let me do this. I want y'all to go back and look this stuff up. And if anything, if y'all want any part of this slide, just let me know, and I'll definitely give it to y'all. Let's go to the bottom. Much of the writings attributed to Thoth or Tahuti constituted a collection of known texts called the Hermetica. It's important. Which the Greeks regarded as revelations of divine truth, not as a product of human reason. So what are you talking about, Divine? Well, we're talking about a god named Tahuti, who we read in the book of Celestial Cow, when Re had to send her Thor to kill mankind, and now death came into the world. He had to go and create an underworld and create a process for a man to go through the realm of the underworld and make it to Tuat, which is the heavenly realm, to become an Ankh or a lightened being. In his absence, he went to Tahuti and said, yo, I'm about to be gone for a little bit, but I'm going to give you this information I want you to share with mankind. This is interesting because when you read the scriptures, anybody knows who Enoch is, or Enoch?
Yeah.
Similar. Anybody, if you read the book of Enoch? Sounds kind of similar. And if you look at Metatron, I don't know if anybody knows who that is. That's the celestial scribe that Enoch took his role. Okay, we're going to move forward. What are the books of Thoth? Remember, we read books. Now look. What we just saw in the Ebers Papyrus, when you read the Ebers Papyrus, which I have a facsimile of, it says that Thoth has given us this information. But Thoth is not even a god. He doesn't exist. So who gave that to them? Oh yeah, the moon gave them that information. Let's be serious, y'all. This is what they believe, right? Let's keep reading. And look, this book right here, if anybody can get a hold of it, which I actually have, I actually got it from a university professor. He put me onto this book. If you go to Amazon, this is a very expensive book, and for a reason. This is very, very important. Listen to what I'm saying to y'all. If anybody get a chance, the Ancient Egyptian Book of Thoth, when I get this back, I'm going to make copies of some of the papers. I can't print all of it. And I'm going to show you what this stuff says. Research the books of Thoth. We're going to read what this is. Written almost entirely in a demonic script, which is the script of the layman, not the Mejunecha, because all the laymen did not understand Mejunecha. The Book of Thoth is probably the product of the scribes of the House of Life, the Temple Scriptorium. It comprises largely a dialogue between a deity, usually called he who praises knowledge, Tahuti, and a mortal, he who loves knowledge. The work covers such subjects as the scribal craft, sacred geography, the underworld, wisdom, prophecy, animal knowledge, and temple ritual. Particularly remarkable is one section, the vulture text, in which each of the 42 gnomes of Egypt is identified with a vulture. Anytime you see a vulture in any kind of manuscript, let's go back to this. The language is poetic, but they would say, oh, it's a poem, so it's not real. Well, people write poems about real life situations.
True story.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just saying, especially my black people, we do that.
Oh, yes.
We let you know about the struggle. You may think it's some fairy tale we're making it into, but we're trying to soften the blow for the other races because they may not understand our struggle. You understand what I'm saying? So we gotta be a little nice with them. But look, the language is poetic. The lines are often clearly organized into verses. The first volume comprises interpretative essays, discussion of specific points such as the manuscript tradition, script, and language. The core of the publication is the transliteration of the demonic text, translation, and commentary. A consecutive translation, glossary, bibliography, and indices and conclude the first volume. The second volume contains photographs of papyri, almost all of which reproduce their original size. What does this mean, Devon? Well, this means that when Tahuti was left to train mankind, he created a collection of works on all the sciences, and he gave it to mankind to start civilization. This is what they say, the ancient Kemetians, this is what they say in their manuscripts. They're saying this. I'm not saying this. They're saying this. Anybody here, if you don't know or understand the Ebers Papyrus, get yourselves an interlinear book on any of the papyruses where it will give you the glyphs, and underneath it will give you the direct English translation of that. This is very important, very, very important, because now we have information coming to the people who they say came from a being, a superhuman being, right? Let's move forward. People will say, you know what? I don't believe that. Because you're going to hear a lot of people say, oh, that's spookism, that's pseudo, that stuff is not real. Yet I give you all the sources for them. But who are the high priests of the cult of Ra? The high priest of Ra, or the high priest of Re, were known as the greatest of seers. The main cult of Ra was in the ancient Heliopolis. Isn't that what we were talking about, guys and ladies? Northeast of present-day Cairo. The Al-Masala area of the Al-Machariya district, the site of Heliopolis, contains the underground tombs of high priests of Re of the 6th dynasty. What do you think you're going to find in here? Which were found in the southeast corner of the great temple of Re Atum archaeological site. The ancient Masala obelisk in Al-Machariya is the only surviving element standing of the Re Atum temple constructed by Pharaoh Senuseret I, 1971, 1926 BC of the 12th dynasty. I wonder why a lot of this information is still not there. Maybe because it's kind of spooky. I'm just saying. But what is this saying, Divine? Who do you think was entrusted with the works of Tahuti? The high priests. The different individuals who were known as the greatest seers. Let me give you something, a nugget I'm going to do in a future presentation. Do you remember the story of Joseph? Anybody remember the story of Joseph? Yes, Joseph in the Bible? Joseph came into Egypt, or Kemet. He got elevated because he interpreted a dream.
Right.
And who was he given to marry? What priest? The priest of On. On is another word for Anu, which is another word of Heliopolis. So Joseph was married into the priesthood of Ra. See, you can't marry a daughter of a priest and not be initiated into the cult system. Now, why was Joseph accelerated to that position? Well, the greatest of seers is there for a reason, because he interpreted a dream. If you ever look at the Dream Perchant, which is a document in ancient Kemet, it will let you know how the ancient Kemetians revered those who can interpret dreams, and they were called seers. That's another lecture. I'm just going to put something a little out there for you. But it's deep when you think about it. See, it's good when you think about it. But all the knowledge was entrusted to the high priest of Ra. People say, oh, that's spookism. That's what they say, spooky, right? It sounds spooky, right? Now, a lot of times they say, oh, you just get white sources. All right. Anybody know who Reginald Muata Ashby is?
Yeah.
Nobody in here? Okay. Well, I have a lot of his work, The Tree of Life, The Pret and Haru, which they purport to be one of the greatest, I guess, layman's colloquial interpretations of the book of the Going Forth by Day. He's actually writes some great stuff. He also touches on yoga, which is interesting. But the reason why I took this out of the book that I have, because I have an ebook that I purchased from this, is because you want to know with one of the upstanding individuals in the Kemetic community, what do they say about these Neteru individuals? Interesting. When you study West African traditional religions, you also see that they also believe in these things. And when you go and take a person who has this new age philosophy in ancient Kemet and say that all this is high science, you take them to an individual in West Africa, such as who practice Ifa, which we may know as the Yoruba tribe, and you talk about Alumea, you talk about the Orisha. It sounds exactly like these stories, but yet those people believe them to be their ancestors. But I'm going to show you something. We're going to move forward. All right, the term Netta, or Netcha, comes from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic language, which did not record most of its vowels. However, the term survives in Coptic language of Nutar. The same Coptic meaning, divine force or sustaining power, applies in the present as it did in ancient times. It is a symbol composed of a wooden staff that was wrapped with stripes of fabric. Now, this is debatable. Some people say it's an axe, some people say it's a flag, like a mummy. The strips alternate in color with yellow, green, and blue. The mummy committed spirituality. It's understood to be the dead but resurrected divinity, Asar. And every human being is a potential resurrected being and Asar. So the Netcha is actually every human being who does not really die but goes to live on in a different form. Further, the resurrected spirit of every human being is the same divinity. Phonetically, the term Nutar is related to other terms having the same meaning as Nutar, and the mundane aspect related to the forces of nature. And you'll hear something like this when Blight talks about this when he was sitting with Elder Gabar. He says, does God have a nature? Listen when he says these things. And this is the key when you read the actual text from black Kemetic authors. And they highly regard Ashby's. Some people don't like them, like Brother Reggie. But Brother Reggie has a different school of thought altogether. But what he's saying is very accurate here. All right, now we're going to keep it in Latin, the Torah, the Spanish, naturalesca. Anybody know Spanish in here? How do you say nature in Spanish?
Naturalesca.
Thank you. Just want to make sure my Spanish is on point. The English nature and nutriment. In general usage, the term nature means divinity. In this context, meaning androgynous, incorporating the male and female, or referring to neither and other. Now, the concept of neter or neteru, when we had that at the end, that includes that means a plurality. Binds and ties all of the varied forms of Kemetic spirituality into one vision of the gods and goddesses, all emerging from the same supreme being. This concept has been referred to as henotheism. If anybody doesn't know what that means you have a pantheon of gods, but you single one out to be supreme above all the other gods. Why this is important? Because when Moses comes out of the Exodus and he encounters in Exodus chapter 18 his father-in-law Jethro, and Jethro hears all these things that Moses did, he said, now I know that Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yahweh, however you want to say it in here, is the Haggadol. What does that mean in Hebrew?
The great God.
The high or the great God. And then he gave worship to him. This is interesting because people say that, oh, Moses only learned from Egypt. Not really. He was 40 years under a high priest. Midian priest called Jethro. You know where Jethro came from? Abraham.
Midian.
Not just that. The third wife, which was Keturah.
Right.
Abraham had a third wife. Prior to his initiation into the priesthood system by Melchizedek, he didn't sacrifice. He didn't get circumcision. He didn't have a son. All the rites and passages didn't occur until after he encountered Melchizedek. The reason why I'm saying this is because then, when he had Keturah as his wife and he had children, the scripture says he gave gifts to all his children. But he singled out Isaac.
And gave him everything.
He gave everything, but not everything. He gave him mostly everything, because he gave some gifts to his other sons. But there's a reason for Midian. One of the gifts that was passed to Midian, if you do your research, is the priesthood of Melchizedek. Because when Moses left out of Egypt, he didn't just go into the woods and just marry some random person. He married the daughter of a high priestess. Remember what I said about Joseph? Then he was initiated into the priesthood. This is why when the Most High came to him, before you can go to Egypt, he had to ask permission from Jethro before you could go. And then when he left out of Egypt, he encountered Jethro again, and Jethro showed him how to set up his congregation based on how a priesthood is supposed to be done, organization. Because the Midianites worshipped. They worshipped Yah. But the problem is they didn't know if he was the supreme God until he did his thing in Egypt. All right, let's move forward. All right, as time progresses, the following development occurs. History is the verifiable account of past events, particularly in human affairs. Legends, traditional story or group of stories told about a particular person or place. A story coming down from the past, especially one popularly regarded as historical, although not fully verifiable. And myths, a story that was told in the ancient culture to explain a practical belief or natural occurrence. Allegory. Why is this important, Divine? Because before the ancient Kemetians started to write down their script, thousands of years passed. Thousands of years passed. So in order for you to fish through the point where writing actually took place, to understand what may have happened in the past, you have to be able to discern a couple of things in the text. You have to know what's history, what's legend, and what's myth, because when it goes to Zep Tepi, or the old time, or the first time, a lot of that is considered myth. It's because when the first events occurred, they were thousands of years displaced from the original story. And as time progresses, it becomes a legend where you have, okay, yeah, this event did happen, we can't really verify because so many years passed, but then it becomes a myth to tell a story of a practice, belief, or natural occurrence. This is very, very important. I want you guys to trace and track this. The reason why I'm touching on this. Let's move forward. Now, people will say, and I said this at the debate, all of that stuff you said there, it's not historical. It's made up. This is myth. It's not real. Interesting. Even though we got testimonies, we got the priesthood of Ra, we see where their underground tombs were. We got all of these lists prior to invasion of them talking about these great ancestors. Let's see if the Egyptians believed these individuals to be historical. The Parliamental Stone covers the period of the Old Kingdom, back thousands of years into the pre-dynastic period. It is inscribed on both sides, starting with the pre-dynastic what? Proceeding on them on through the demigods. Oh, man, that's spooky. And finally, a long list of Egyptian kings, down to the middle of the 5th dynasty. It is likely that Manetho used this document and put it together his famous Egyptica. Now, this is interesting for something that's just a myth. Why the heck would you put this in a historical, legal, administrative document about kings that did not exist?
True.
Unless they did in some state or form. How would you put this in a historical document? If you had a myth, you wouldn't even list them. That's what I'm thinking. But this is just one source. And if you want to go see the Palermo store here, the fragment of the Egyptian royal annals housed in Palermo, Italy. If anybody want to go there and check it out. But let's see if there's another witness to this account. The Turin's King's List. The Turin Canon was found on the reverse of a papyrus tax roll. It lists many of the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, including a number of gods. It was composed during the reign of Ramses II by Theban scribes, and so it presents the Theban political viewpoint. For example, it begins the 11th dynasty with the founders of Theban line rather than with the later reign of Amenhotep II. Now, you know why this is important? Because when you look at the first column, it talks about the pre-dynastic Hebrew god kings. Gad is there, Asar is there, Sekhet is there, Hebrew is there, Tahuti is there, Ma'at was there. So this is myth. But here is a scribe writing down legal, administrative documentation, and they putting these spooky gods on there. Somebody needs to question it. But maybe I'm just making it up. Is there another source? Let's move on. Manetho's King's List is in his work Egyptica, which we don't have the entire transcription of it because his work was lost, but we get his work from several other authors. We have the testimony of a Heliopolitan, again, the Heliopolitan Anu, priest named Manetho. In the 3rd century BC, he compiled a comprehensive and widely respected history of Egypt, which provided an extensive king's list for the entire dynastic period. If we are to allow Manetho to speak for himself, we have no choice but to turn to the text in which the fragments of his work are preserved. One of the most important of these is the Armenian version of the Chronica of Eusebius. It begins by informing us that it is extracted from the Egyptian history of Manetho, who composed his account in 3 books. These deal with the gods, demigods, and the mortal kings who rule Egypt. Wow. Citing Manetho directly, Eusebius begins by reeling off a list of the gods who consist essentially of the familiar Ennead of Heliopolis, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Set, and so on. These were the first to hold sway in Egypt. Thereafter, the kingship passed from one to another in unbroken succession. The king lineage, keep this in mind, through 13,900 years. After the gods, demigods reigned for 1,255 years. And again, another line of kings held sway for 1,817 years. Then came 30 more kings, reigning for 1,790 years. And then again, 10 kings ruling for 250 years. Now, the interesting thing about this, when you read the scriptures, people were living for a long time. And that's spooky. That's really spooky. But then when you read this, man, wow, this is even more spooky. I mean, wow. They're saying that through the succession of the kingship came from Ra all the way on. That means you can't be a king unless it's through the lineage of Ra. And the reason why they had to make these kings lists is because they had to convince the laity that the Masut ruling was from the lineage of Ra. See? Don't work no other way. Can't just say the son gave me the power. So like I said, the son gave me the power too. But now we're talking about bloodline, and a certain amount of people are entrusted with this information. That other person can't say they're from that bloodline because most of the laity was not educated.
That's right.
So when Tahuti gave the information to the priest, it was their job to pick up the suit or king. And say to them, listen, we got to keep this for the people. Let's say it is men. They say, okay, we're going to keep it for the people. And we're going to say a god named Ra gave us the lineage. Let's say it was them. Do you think that that is fair to lie to people and tell the people there's no such thing as gods? When you know it's a science, but a lot of them tell them it's a god so that you can deceive them and rule? That doesn't sound too fair to me. If you're saying it's with us, that sounds like deception.
Sound like
Deception.
It does, right? He said he's crazy. All right, let's move forward. The deification of the suit, because now we gotta say, if what that's saying is true, was the Nasut deified? Imperial code. Imperial code is a form of state religion, you have to look this up, in which an emperor or a dynasty of emperors are worshipped as messiahs, demigods, or deity. Cult here is used to mean worship, not in the modern pejorative sense. The cult may be one of personality in the case of a newly arisen euhemerus. Thank you. I don't know how I froze for a second. Figure on the national identity, i.e. the Egyptian pharaoh. A divine king is a monarch who is held in a special religious significance by his subjects and served as both head of state and a what? Deity or head religious figure. This system of government combines theocracy with an absolute monarchy, which is not true, it's really an oligarchy because the king didn't rule by himself. The priesthood is very important, instrumental in regards to who's going to be king. And when the king didn't do his job, you know what happened? The priest bodied him.
Absolutely.
Y'all know what that means in New York? That means they put him to death.
That's right.
And you know, some people in the Kemetic community, like Brother Reggie, who's very honest, will tell you that this occurred. They know this, but they're not telling us this. Alright, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were believed throughout ancient Egyptian history to be incarnations of the god Heru. The living Nasut would rule on the throne of Heru. But when he died, he would be in the underworld with Ra, or Re. This is very important because he's ruling on the throne of Heru. Why you gotta mention Heru? This is just science. Because it traces his lineage, connecting him to who? Ra. Alright? Whatever. The royal cult is origin. I can skip through all of this, but pretty much what you're saying is the royal cult is in origin and goal of the traditional theology of the Old Kingdom. Heliopolis, when we talk about Hermopolis is here, Memphis, Sidon. Without the king, there is no ma'at or order, and the created world returns to chaos as light to darkness. The ideal of divine kingship, a unity of temporal and spiritual activities, is crucial to understand the canon of the Old Kingdom mentality and way of life. Especially in the third, fourth, and fifth dynasties, which is the Old Kingdom, a fairly unmixed, pristine strand of this culture is revealed. The divine nature of the king is the core myth holding ancient Egyptian society together. It explains royal magic, great speech in Ma'at, and the ideal of the Heliopolitan priest, the high priest of Ra. The living Heru king guarantees a good Nile, and his united administration creates economic surplus. The Nile records his magic, while the pacification of the two lands is his control and power, the brilliance of his great mansion. Centuries before Unas, this state ideology was already in place. Before Unas came on the scene in the Old Kingdom, they already believed that the Nasut was from the lineage of Ra, and he's ruling through that bloodline, and he is the God on earth, and if he's not doing his job, we're going to have a bad harvest. There's no flooding of the Nile. The God's going to be mad at us. Very interesting stuff, especially when we look at the famine stellar. That's kind of spooky too. Yes?
I just wanted to give you a time check.
Oh, thank you. What time is it? I'm sorry.
10:28.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to run through this. All right, what is the son of Re title? As Papyrus Westcott puts in evidence, the beginning of the 5th dynasty saw a major change in Egyptian religion. The powerful influence of Re made the first pharaoh of the 5th dynasty, which is King Usaka, high priest of Re and begotten by Ra himself. Re had visited the wife of Usera, the high priest of Re. The result was the birth of a divine child. The pyramid of Usaka was built in North Saqqara, close to the northeastern corner of Joseph's enclosure. The main surviving architectural achievement of Pharaoh Usaka, and he's very important, I want you to look that up, was his temple dedicated to Re, the sun god. 6 of the 7 kings of the 5th dynasty, King Unas included, would do the same in the next 80 years. Re became a state god, and Pharaoh, the son of Re. These temples were personal monuments to each king's continued relationship with Re during life and in the afterlife. However, in the royal cult, 3 central national types emerged. On the one hand, the divine king, his residence and magical power to assure a good now, and on the other hand, his father, the creator god Re, father of the gods and giver of life. And I didn't get a chance to go into it, but if you look into Khufu and his sons, it's very spooky stuff that was going on here because it had to do with Re interfacing with the woman to create seed for children. Man, that's very spooky. When we get a chance, Rujajek and Khufu, look into that. Let's move forward. Now, people said, we want to see the primaries of this information that you're talking about. Divine, all right. There were no deities properly defined, like we did earlier. In ancient Kemet, can someone please properly decipher the following? Son of Re. We have the pintail duck here, and then we have the sun. When you syntax pintail duck with the sun, you get the possessive of, which means son of Re. When we look at Amenhotep, his early inscription, he says, existing, the son of Ra. His beloved, Amenhotep, God and ruler of Thebes. Son of Ra. But that's mythos, okay? Gebel Barkel Stella, Thutmose III says, son of Ra, and his body, his beloved, lord of every foreign land, Thutmose is beautiful of form. Son of Re. The Nubian rebellion, recorded by inscription of Thutmose II, son of Re, Thutmose, beautiful in appearance, on the Heru throne of the living. His father, Re, and his protection of Moon, Lord of the thrones of the two lands. And his majesty said, as Re loves me, as my father praises me, the Lord of the gods, Amun, and the Lord of the thrones of the two lands, I will not let their men live. So that means in order for me to do my excursions, and for me to bang on other cultures, I had to do it in the name of my God, who's actually my father, who I'm the son of.
Sounds good.
That sounds kind of spooky there. But they believed it. Devon, you got more? Listen, I can't even give you all of the coronation, decree, coronation. That means we're going to officiate you being king. It says, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, son of Re, Thutmose. The second Stella, under Sensuret II, it says, live Horus, divine of being, two lands, divine of birth, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, given life by the god Heru, living of being, son of Re, of his body, his beloved, lord of the two lands. Now, something's weird there. Why is the suits and all of these stellas? Now, mind you though, anybody can read the Metrunetcha. Some of these are transcriptions, some of these are actual glyphs. You can actually go to the stellas yourselves, and anybody want it, I can give you the facility that I got from Rutgers University, where a con professor there was able to give me some of this information. And y'all can read these things for yourself, or take it to somebody who actually reads Metrunetcha and ask them to decipher, what does son of Re mean? Is that just some mythological thing? Let's move forward. Can the divine right to rule be proven? Does anybody know what the dream stella is? Anybody? Dream stella? Right. The Sphinx, also located in Giza, was built around 2500 BCE, which is approximate, about 700 years before Joseph came to Egypt and 1100 years before Moses' time. Although this curious creature with a human head and body of a lion is crumbling because of wind, humidity, and then found among Cairo, it has managed to survive, right? Now, what is this thing about? As a young prince in Egypt, Thutmose claimed that a god, because now he was the illegitimate son. They didn't know if he was supposed to rule or reign. How can you prove that you have the right to rule or reign? A deity told me that I have the right. Keep reading. It says, Thutmose had fallen asleep beside a small portion of the creature, talking about the Sphinx, that protruded above the sand at the time. The god Harmarchus told Thutmose to clear away the sand from the Sphinx since it was choking the creature. Harmarchus promised that Thutmose was faithful in this task, he would be rewarded with kingship. Interesting thing, Thutmose was by himself when this occurred. Nobody witnessed this, but he came back and told people, be clearing the sand because I had a dream that a God told me that if I do it, I'm the rightful heir to the throne. That sounds really spooky, and this is even after the old kingdom period we're talking about. Thutmose IV is later on. We're talking about Middle Kingdom, late Middle Kingdom, going into the 18th, 19th dynasties, etc. Now, I'm getting close to our presentation, about 10 more minutes, but veneration of the dead. Because now they're saying that, oh, all that stuff is mythos. Well, if you look at all of this stuff, I think somebody took a good amount of time, effort, and energy to really craft something up that they really didn't even believe. That's interesting. That's really interesting. But what is the veneration of the dead? The veneration of the dead, including one's ancestors, is based on the belief that the dead have a continued existence and many possess the ability to what? The fortune of the living. Some groups venerate their direct familiar ancestors. Tombs were housing and the hereafter, and so they were carefully constructed and decorated, just as homes for the living were. Mummification was a way to preserve the corpse so that the ka, or the soul, of the deceased could return to receive offerings of the things he enjoyed while alive. When mummification was not affordable, a ka statue in the likeness of the deceased was carved for this purpose. The blessed dead were collectively called the Aku, or shining ones. Singular is Ak. The process by which a ka became an Ak was not automatic upon death. Listen to this. This is really spooky, right? It involved a 70-day journey through the Duat, or Anduat, which is the underworld, which led to judgment before Wasir, or Set, or Sar, Lord of the dead, where the ka's heart would be weighed on a scale against a feather ma'at. However, if the ka was not properly prepared, this journey could be fraught with dangerous pitfalls. This is why you have all these spells in the Book of the Dead, a book of going forth by day. However, if the ka was not properly prepared, this journey could be fraught with dangerous pitfalls and strange demons. Because some of the gods were represented with demons or spirits in the underworld. Hence, some of the earliest religious texts discovered, such as the Papyrus of Anai, commonly known as the Book of the Dead, and the Pyramid texts were actually written as guides to help the deceased successfully navigate the Duat. Why am I going through all of this if I didn't believe that they were ancestors who came before me, who were great beings? The problem was when the ancestors died, right? Remember we said that some of the suits who were ruling in the pre-dynastic period, they could die. They became deified ancestors, and now they can influence the real world. This is why we create offerings to them, because we believe that they exist and they're watching over us. You hear people in the Kemetic community say, I pray to their ancestors. Well, who are you praying to? If it's just high science. Interesting. Those who will become lost in the Duat, deliberately trying to avoid judgment, became unfortunate. Mutu, the restless dead. For the few who truly evil hearts outweigh the feather, God's admit, waiting patiently behind, when Seer's judgment seek to consume them. For this reason, ancestor veneration in ancient Egypt was an important rite of remembrance in order to keep the ka alive in this life as well as in the next. Royals, nobles, and the wealthy made contracts with their local priests to perform prayers and give offerings at their tombs. Why? If there's no such thing as these deified ancestors called gods that are influencing our lives, why are you going through all of this hard work to build all of these temples and have all these priests? Either you're lying to the people or they really believe this. In return, the priests were allowed to keep a portion of the offerings as payment for services rendered. What they would say in the Kemetic community, oh yeah, they gave offerings, but with the partnership miss is that the priests ate the offerings. And same thing in our culture too. The priests had to eat some of the offerings well. Am I right? Okay. Where is this found? Pyramid text of Unis, utterance 217, the deceased ascends to Rhea tomb. The deceased ascends. Pyramid text of Tepi, utterance 422, transformation of the deceased into the Ankh. Utterance 570, deification of the deceased. Utterance 571, the deceased is the eternal son of who? What is the meaning of the book of the coming forth by day? Re and Haru. The cycle of the sun rising from the east and setting in the west. The dead were called Westerners because they were buried in the west, where the sun sets, where the sun rises. You had a lot of the temples or the areas where people were born. It's a symbolism. Leaving as darkness to do what? Transform into an arc of light to join Ra into Ra. Let's move forward. Now, after I said all of this, you're like, Devon, man, you long-winded, my man. Let's see if Polite agrees with you. And if Polite does agree with you, what caused him to switch his disposition? Let's take a look at that real quick. Y'all ready?
It's undoubtedly people world over have not only experienced who they identify as star beings, not me, but these same beings that have been identified as beings from the stars have obviously encountered more than one culture. And each culture that has an account of these star beings that physically demonstrated on what they were before the people, everyone had their own interpretation of their experience with the same beings. There are accounts. If you go into the Egyptian doctrine thick enough, deep enough, you have what they call the sun folk. Okay, so when you go into like the coffin text and the pyramid text, you have to actually read over 700 chapters. And one thing that you will learn about is what they call sun folk. Beings have encountered several different races and subspecies of those races. And they have their accounts and their recollection of how they identified physical beings that were great before them. Listen. And these beings were so great or so advanced in information that they were rendered gods because of how great and how advanced in information they were.
That's what my whole presentation was about, my man. Was anybody at the Ali Muhammad debate with Polite? A brother asked him this question. And Polite has a book in his hand. You can go to 2012 stores and order it yourself. This is a book, he normally writes a book before every debate. You read the book, everything he's saying is in his book. If he was to say this and this was his position, I would say, cool. But we saw earlier, he said there's no gods, right? But he said star beings who were physically great and called gods. Let's see this clip real quick. This is another short clip.
So I'm sitting here and every day I'm praying and connecting with the ancestors. So I'm sitting here and every day I'm praying and connecting with the ancestors.
When we talk about extraterrestrials, we're laying claim to who did it, where they come from, why they did it, how it got done. The questions that religion will stop at is where the extraterrestrial doctrine will begin.
Listen, closely.
All right, I've asked you this before.
Because all religions come from.
I'm going to ask you again.
Okay, all religions come from our ancestors experiencing star beings.
Whoa!
I'm sitting here and every day I'm praying.
Connecting with the ancestors. So the ancestors he's connected and praying to are the star beings who are physically great and considered gods and they influence civilization. Polite, man, you a genius, yo. You actually summed up my entire presentation. That's all I'm trying to say. But why is Polite saying there's no gods? I mean, just think about it. Why is he saying there's no gods, but yet still he just confirmed everything I just taught? You're going to find out real quick. Does Brother Jonathan agree? You think Jonathan agrees? Brother Jonathan on Facebook on January 3rd at 10:37 a.m. It was edited too, right? Because he had to make it politically, correct. First, Osiris, or Asar, was not God. Now remember, he's talking about a Eurocentric idea of God, which is abstract, something that's not, in regards to deism, you know what I'm saying, it doesn't interface with its creation, just something that is remote, and man has to try to figure out the deepness of God. But we believe that this guy has to actually interface with mankind. So this is what he's talking about. Remember, you got to always get them on definition, define what you mean God. He says, especially if he had a body. Whoa. He's saying Asar has a body? This is what Jonathan is saying. This ain't Jesus, he says. He would have been a deified ancestor. The great ancestor, like Hadjetware. Secondly, all Egyptian deceased became Osiris. So finally, what say on the tomb has been customary since the 4th dynasty. Just to say it's God's tomb, again, he's not defining what God is, when we did not have a word for divinity like God. Okay, then say deified ancestors, or that's what Neteru means, a deified ancestor. These are all the fruits of our monotheistic tendencies. We found the tomb of God. He's saying he found the tomb of God. Because Osiris had a body. This is what Jonathan is saying. So I'm not making this stuff up. Sounds spooky though, right? I'm just saying, it sounds spooky. And I respect Jonathan's work, but he just put it out. All right, since I'm running a long time, these are all the books that I have in my library. I had to read over all of them again, so that way I can have a fruitful presentation. This presentation, I didn't really go back over my notes again because I was focusing on tomorrow, which is going to be much better than whatever I do here. But if you go through these books, and I own all of these books, I even have about 6 of them in ebooks if anybody wants it. Yeah. If you read through these books, everything that I said, that Polite said, that Jonathan said in regards to there being star beings or deified ancestors, you'll see that this is the indigenous thought of the ancient Kemetians. Also, Jonathan uses the Vigus Egyptian Dictionary by Mark Vigus. It's a PDF file I can share with y'all. He uses that to decipher his Medjunecha. And the Saurus Linguica Egyptica, you can sign up and log in online if you also want to decipher the Medjunecha. These are some of the sources that they use. Let's move forward. Oh, good book. Oh, I have this book. I want to bring it. It's called Fallen Star Gods by J.S. Gordon. That's a great book right there. I think Polite read that book. But if you read that book, everything that we were talking about is summed up in that's a great book, man. Anything, y'all need to read that. Let's move forward. Now, origin of Kemetic atheism. 5 minutes left, right? Run through it. The Greek invasion of ancient Kemet. This is from Stolen Legacy. The Egyptians educated the Greeks. The effects of the Persian conquest. All right? Owing to the practice of piracy in which the Ionians, Carians were active, the Egyptians were forced to make immigration laws restricting the immigration of the Greeks and punishing the infringement by capital punishment. Now, if we keep going on, it says the genesis of the Greek Enlightenment. The Persian invasion did not only provide the Greeks with ample research, but stimulated the creation of prose history in Ionia. Heretofore, the Greeks had little or no accurate knowledge of Egyptian culture, but their contact with Egypt resulted in the genesis of their enlightenment. If you keep reading here, it says students from the Ionia and the lands of the Aegean visit Egypt for their education. Just as in our modern times, countries like the United States, England, and France are attracting students from all parts of the world on account of their leadership and culture. If you keep reading, the immigration of Greeks to Egypt for the purpose of their education began as a result of the Persian invasion. The royal library and museums, together with temples and other libraries, were looted by the Greeks' invasion. If you keep reading, the author here, which is George Anthony, actually you can purchase the book, it's over here. And this is a great book, right? It says, it is my firm belief that this indeed was a great opportunity which Alexander gave Aristotle and enabled him and his people to carry off as many books as they wanted from the royal library. I'm going to sum this up. What is this talking about? That means that when invasion happened, the immigration laws were changed because of the Persians invading ancient Kemet. The Greeks crept in. When the Greeks came in, it was like, oh, shoot, this is good knowledge. So now you had indigenous, concrete thought of them believing in deified ancestors. And here comes in a people who are very spooky because they don't really have a history. They go in and they take all the libraries, all the Greek philosophers trained in ancient Kemet, and they come out and they produce a totally different system that's abstract and it's not concrete because they don't have any lineage to these deified ancestors. This is why you started seeing the Greeks sort of marry into the Egyptian bloodline because they wanted to trace their lineage and also justify why they came in and took all of these libraries. That's the reason why I'm saying, why are you saying this, Divine? Yes.
1044, we have another guess.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry, I'm rushing. All right,
Yeah.
Renaissance period. Study the Renaissance period. The Renaissance period of the 12th century was a period of many changes at the outset of the High Middle Ages. It includes social, political, economic transformations and an intellectual revitalization of Western Europe with strong philosophical roots. These changes paved the way for the later achievements such as the literary and artistic movement of the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century and the scientific developments of the century. Why is this important? Apart from depopulation and other factors, most classical scientific treatises of classical antiquity written in Greek had become unavailable. Philosophical and scientific teachings of early Middle Ages was based upon few Latin translations and commentaries on ancient Greek scientific and philosophical texts that remained in the Latin West, not to mention that even that remained at minimal levels. Scroll forward, I'm sums up. The transition from Greek to medieval philosophy was a rough one. The new breed of philosophers were greatly influenced by Greek thought, particularly the views of Aristotle and Plotinus. The Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment is an era from the 1650s to the 1700s in which cultural intellectual forces in Western Europe emphasized reason, analysis, individualism rather than traditional lines of authority. It was promoted by philosophies and local thinkers and urban coffee houses, salons, and what? Masonic lodges. Move forward. We're almost done. The idea of Kemetic atheism has its origins in European Freemasonry.
Wow. How about that?
Our first inquiry then will be into the nature of symbolism. This is by Albert G. Mackey, which I have a whole bunch of Masonic works. Opposite gifts to speculative masonry, and thirdly, to understand this, to know its origin, and its necessity, and its mode of application, we must begin with the reference to the condition of a long past period of time. 1,000 years ago, the science of symbolism was adopted by the Sagacious priesthood of Egypt to convey the lessons of worldly wisdom and religious knowledge, which they thus communicated to their disciples. Their science, their history, and their philosophy was thus concealed beneath an impenetrated veil, which is the indigenous way, from all the profane, and only the few who had passed through this severe ordeal of initiation were put in possession of the key which enabled them to decipher and read, because again, now everything's scientific. Now, I'm gonna wrap this up. Take a look at Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians, written by Manly P. Hall. This is a Mason, right? Remember the Enlightenment period, it revitalized the Greeks stole the history from somebody else and made everything abstract, everything is high science, nothing is indigenous to the land or concrete to the people. And Pratar-Repoa, or initiations into the ancient secret society of Egyptian priests. Now that the priests, the Greek priests went and took all the works of the ancient Kemetic priests, they took all their works now. Some of them were burned, some of them were destroyed. Now they're telling you the story that everything is high science. No such thing as deified ancestors. Everything's high science. And this was revitalized in the Renaissance period and crept its way into Masonry. So now when we see this happen in our community, when you read books for insight Kemetic atheism, Freemasonry and the Birth of Modern Science by Robert Lomas, The Symbolism of Freemasonry, Albert G. Mackey, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Manly P. Hall. Oh, you want something black? Gotcha. African Origin of Freemasonry, The True History of Freemason in Africa and Its Resurrection Among Africans in Diaspora, The Path of Initiation by J.S. Gordon, Esoteric Egypt, again by J.S. Jordan, and Freemasonry, Greek Philosophy, The Prince Hall Fraternity, and the Egyptian African World Connection. What are you saying, Devon? Did I wrap it up and give it to my man, Zion Lex? If we look at the indigenous texts themselves, they tell you that their gods were the deified ancestors who preceded them, that created mankind. And they were the kings, as we saw the kings list. And that they gave mankind all this knowledge, all this information, all this life. And when they died, they passed through the underworld, right? The netherworld, we got Amdubat and Tutuat, right? And now they are influencing what happens in this realm. And this is why you have to build temples to please these gods. And the famine cell is very important. When you look up the famine cell, you very understand that this stuff is not mythos. This stuff was real. And the suits thought that, man, the Nile's not flooding. We need to go find out what happens. Imhotep comes back and say, yo, we're not worshiping a god. All right, let's set up a temple for him and worship this god so the Nile can flood. Now, that doesn't sound like high science to me. It just doesn't. So now when the Greeks came in, the Greeks took all this information that's not there, they had no lineage to, they had to make it abstract and philosophical because they cannot connect themselves to the deified ancestors of the indigenous priests, and therefore they created a whole entire system of high science. Everything is abstract. Everything is high science. This doesn't mean that nature was not venerated, but everything in nature was associated with a deity, and this is why they respected nature. Now why is this important? Because now when you see the Renaissance period where they revitalize these Greek philosophical works, it crept into our modern day Asian time, like everything now is just symbolic and it's high science and it's not real. This crept into Prince Hall Freemasonry. Anybody know Prince Hall?
Yeah.
And then now all the other Masonic lodges. So now when you go through your rites of Masonry, you come in as a rough Asher and you can become a school Asher. Because you come in rough thinking an indigenous way, but by the time you make it up to the top, they tell you all of that's symbolic, my man. None of that stuff is real. So that means a lot of the teachers in our Kemetic community are initiated in these rites of passage influenced by Greek thought, and removing us away from the indigenous way of life. So we need to ask them these questions when we see them and say, what lodge did you go to? And when they start teaching you, tell them to give you all the references in the actual stellars themselves, the worldlies themselves, that say everything that we're talking about is high science. You don't really believe it is high science. They will not produce any work like that for you because it doesn't exist. But if you go to the Greeks will tell you that. And with that, I'm done.
People going for Brother Divine. Then the question is laid to rest whether the ancient Egyptians believed in gods and goddesses and deities.
Yeah.
But, anybody who's teaching you there's high science, he's probably a Mason, right?